The Denver Broncos just get insanely encouraging news, third-party validation that the future is wildly bright for your Denver Broncos. We get an update on where Vance Joseph is heading and not heading. We get an update on our special teams coordinator search, and we get some snubs that we got to dive into. If you're new to the channel, I'm a diehard Denver Broncos fan named Ben. Helps me in the YouTube algorithm out immensely. If you like the Broncos too, if you would like and subscribe. So we are getting to the end of the year time where all of the awards are heaped upon a team. And if you had told us during the dark days of being a Broncos fan under Nathaniel Hackett or Fangio or Vance Joseph the first time, dating all the way back to our quarterback carousel, that in just a few short years, we would have a candidate for Coach of the Year, a candidate for Rookie of the Year, a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year, and then a couple snubs who also could have their name in there. You'd be like, sign me up. Well, guess what? That just happened, and we should be wildly excited about it. Denver Broncos have a candidate for Coach of the Year. Sean Payton's name is in there, which is awesome. He's a finalist. That was a huge underdog bet to happen. If you took that bet in the offseason to even have his name in it, this team that was supposed to win only 5 games, his name is in it. It is looking like it is an absolute lock that we have the Defensive Player of the Year in Patrick Surtain, which is really, really hard for a cornerback to get in this era where all the hype goes to whoever's sacking the quarterback. And then we have a candidate for Offensive Rookie of the Year, and his name is Bo Nix. And before you, everybody is now, jumping on and saying, oh, well, it's definitely going to be Jaden Daniels. And it's easy to see that, Jaden Daniels had an amazing playoff game against a defense that hasn't been that good and let the Buffalo Bills drop 40-plus on them. And they have, 52 players on injured reserve or whatever. And if you actually just look at the numbers in the regular season, it is very, very comparable how these two played, and you got to give Jaden Daniels his credit for that game in the playoffs. But, man, Bo Nix outplayed Jaden Daniels in the regular season, and I think if you look at the Broncos' opponents and the Commanders' opponents, you have a real argument to make that Bo Nix played top-tier defenses and has less targets around him and less talent around him than Jaden has. But either way, our name is in the list, and that is a phenomenal thing. So taking a look here, there are definitely some snubs on here as well. So obviously, Coach of the Year, this is really cool to be mentioned in that category. Assistant Coach of the Year, this is a thing where Cody Roark, love his work every day on Locked On Broncos and his writing at Mile High Huddle or Mile High Sports. He came out and was just saying that that's a massive snub that the Denver Broncos did not have Vance Joseph named to that. He had this team playing so far over its skis, and even dating back to last year, that 5-game win streak that we went on against playoff teams was because of Vance Joseph and what he did with his defense. And he took a defense that has 1 first-round draft pick in it, and that is Patrick Surtain, and he had it in the top 10 in 9 of 11 major categories and playing way above any of its pay grade. And so that is a wild snub there. Let me know in the comments, do you think that Vance Joseph's name should have been in here? And I definitely think it should. And watching, I never was impressed with the Detroit Lions defense this entire season. And so that's interesting to me. Brian Flores, obviously a great defensive coordinator, and Vic Fangio is as well. But I think that you easily could have swapped Aaron Glenn for Vance Joseph. So that's an interesting take there. The next one on here that I think is a huge snub is taking a look at Defensive Player of the Year. And I think it's probably unrealistic to expect the Broncos to have 2 names on this list for Defensive Player of the Year, but they should have. And by all metrics and even an objective person taking a look at this, Nick Bonitto played better this season than TJ Watt. And the numbers back that up. So ML Football put this out here, and Bonitto had more sacks than JJ Watt. He had more. He only had 7 less tackles. He had 2 forced fumbles where Watt had 6, but he also had an interception, and not just an interception, kind of a game-sealing interception for 6, and a fumble 6 as well. And so I just think that if you take a look at that, you easily could have had Nick Bonitto's name on there. Even if he's not, the future is insanely bright for this team that has so many young players on it, and not just young players who are scrapping to get to 500, young players that were almost tied with the Buffalo Bills at halftime, and that's something to be extremely, extremely excited about moving forward there. So a great day there, getting awards thrown out to us. Next piece of news that we have got to get into here is there seems to be a lot of controversy around Ben Johnson and his being named to the Chicago Bears head coaching spot. So Ben Johnson originally people were saying that Darren Rizzi was the special teams coordinator that Sean Payton wanted to pluck from the New Orleans Saints. He's a great special teams coordinator. Of all of his years, he pretty much always has that team playing at a top 10 level. And so Sean Payton wanted to reunite with him. And then there was chatter that Rizzi was going to go there and play there. And now more and more is coming out just about how Ben Johnson did not leave on good terms, that there's feuds with him and Dan Campbell. There's even like talks about like he didn't pay tickets that he got, parking tickets when he was there and stuff like that. And interesting here to see that as Sean Payton went out and congratulated different coaches who got jobs who he'd worked with, he made a point to congratulate Aaron Glenn, the assistant coach there, rather than Ben Johnson. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Just looking here that Ben Johnson going to the Chicago Bears did not sit well with a lot of people in the NFL. My take with Ben Johnson is he is either going to be Sean McVay and everyone in the world is going to be like, oh my goodness, y'all have Ben Johnson, he's the best. Or he's going to be Cliff Kingsbury, Josh McDaniels, one of those hot coordinators who was fantastic at drawing up plays, but at the end of the day couldn't lead people. And just the fact that even Sean Payton doesn't seem to be a fan, and that he feuded with Dan Campbell, I could see that being a very rocky start for Ben Johnson. So something we will keep our eyes on. But the good news in all of that Chicago Bears drama is that Darren Rizzi is back on the table for the Denver Broncos, as it's looking like Rizzi is not going to Chicago, which means he is back on the table for your Denver Broncos, which would be fantastic. I think that would be a massive upgrade at that position. We fired our special teams coordinator. Then we were like, oh, we don't want to be left without a date to this dance, and Banjo is getting a job elsewhere. And so I love the fact that he's back on the table unless he gets the head coaching job with the Vegas Raiders. Now, speaking of Vegas Raiders, interesting thing here is that all the talk had been that the Raiders are going to get Pete Carroll. But today, just a few hours ago, there was a news report dropped that Pete Carroll is actually speaking to the Dallas Cowboys. So what if at the 11th hour they came in and stole Pete Carroll? You could then see Vance Joseph back on the board for the Vegas Raiders, which obviously means the Broncos have to reshuffle the deck. And does Jim Leonard get that job? What do we do there? We'd get the 2 compensatory picks, but just an interesting point there. And then the last piece of news on the Vegas Raiders, they did indeed, they fired their GM, Tom Telesco, who'd had a couple good drafts in a row there for the Raiders because the Raiders thought they were in pulling position to get Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson snubs them and goes with the Chicago Bears without ever even taking an interview, just a Zoom call and a bunch of text messages, which is part of why there's bad blood there. So the Vegas Raiders finally hired a new GM, which is this guy named Spytek, which everyone thought was funny that his name was Spytek and he's working with Tom Brady again. And he used to be the GM in Tampa and brought Tom Brady in when he was 43. And so there's now rumors, as the Raiders don't have a quarterback moving forward, might the Raiders bring back Aaron Rodgers? So you could see a world now, because the Raiders have kind of hurt themselves when it comes to drafting a quarterback, because they don't have a top 5 pick anymore, that they're going to have to settle on either running it back with Aiden O'Connell or bringing in Aaron Rodgers, or if it is Pete Carroll, bringing back Russell Wilson. Either way, it's going to be a very fun year to get to play the Raiders twice, knowing that you're either playing a 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers or an absolutely cooked Russell Wilson. So we'll keep eyes on that. Let me know how you're feeling about the Broncos selections to those year-end awards in Broncos country. We got a ton to believe in. I got to get my shot back. I haven't missed it since we got knocked out of the playoffs, but it's happening right now. Ooh, I'm back.